everybody. Welcome back to Inside the Musical Mind. I want to welcome the one and only Vinnie Moore to the program. How you doing, Vinnie?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate
No
it.
problem. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. So, Double Exposure, been out for a little bit now. How's the reception going?
So far, so good. It seems that most people are liking it, fortunately for me, which feels good because, you put out a new record and you're always like a little bit concerned and worried, how people will receive it. But so far, it seems to be really good, the
It's
reception.
a bit of a departure for your solo work, and it's really cool. Like I'm wondering, for those who have not heard the album yet, shame on you. But so you've done 12 songs, but basically you've got the first six, you've got various vocals on, various guest singers, and then you did another version instrumental.
Exactly. Yeah, it's broken into two.
What I'm wondering is because I know your back catalog, and I had Mind's Eye back in and all that. Do you think that you having been in UFO for so long and Alice Cooper before that, did that sort of get you more in the mindset of being able to easily write songs with a space for vocals?
I don't know. I've always written vocal songs even before I joined UFO.
Mhm.
And in fact, some of the first songs that I did with UFO were instrumental tunes that I had written.
Mm.
So when I write for UFO, I know I'm writing, more for a band situation with a vocalist. So I have a bit different of approach. And when I come up with an idea, I know immediately where it's going to go. It's going to be a vocal tune or this is going to be an instrumental. Although there are times when you could approach a song as a vocal or an instrumental, and that's kind of what this album highlights. Is that each one of these songs? I mean, they were written as instrumentals, but I realized while listening to the demos that they could be easily vocal songs, and so that's kind of what spawned the idea. It was like a light bulb moment for me.
Right. That brings me to a point I was wondering. Did you flesh out the instrumental versions before you submitted them to the singers? Like, because I'm wondering is, demoitis is a real thing. Um, if you had the vocal versions already in place, was it hard to deviate from that once you're writing lead melody lines for the guitar, or did you already have those recorded?
They were written first, and I had demoed them out, and so yeah, and what was I going to say? Yeah, I was listening through the instrumental songs. I was going to just make like a 6 song EP, maybe only
Yeah.
release it as digital files. And as I was going through and listening to all the demos and listening for ideas, that's when I started hearing vocals in my head. I started singing along with the tracks. And that's when I got this big idea to take these instrumental songs and also do them as vocal songs. So then I like thought of some of the people I knew who were vocalists, and I started sending some of the tracks out and getting the vocal stuff back from them.
Now, did you write vocals for it? Did you just scat over it, or did you write like sketches, or like are you an accomplished lyric writer, or did you just say, "Hey, this"?
I wouldn't consider myself a great lyricist, but I did write temporary lyrics for all the songs, and I sang with them. And then when I sent the songs out to the singers, I sent both versions, the instrumental version and then a version with me singing, and said, just do whatever you want, totally come up with your own thing. If you like any of my ideas, then you can use those, whatever you want to do, just be creative. And there are a few where they actually used my choruses or maybe a B section or a line or here, or two here or there. But there are other songs where the singer just totally did their own thing lyrically and melodically too.
Cool. Yeah, that is cool, and it's good to know, like, if like they discarded everything you did, but it's cool that they kept some of them. But
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, I'm kind of crazy when I write, the floodgates open. And so with some of these songs, I had like four totally different choruses and I couldn't decide which was best. And I would give all of that to the singer and say, do you like any of these or would you like to go with your own thing? It just drives me crazy sometimes how many I have too many ideas often when I'm writing a song and I can't figure out which one I like best.
sure. Now, when you're writing a song, how do you picture it in your head? Like if are you strictly at your guitar as you're composing it, or are you mowing the lawn or running and doing groceries? And if you're doing that, are you hearing sounds in your head? Are you picturing your fingers on the fretboard? Or are you just picturing a basic vibe?
It usually starts, I mean, the impetus of a song is with me playing guitar, it
Mhm.
seems. But then after I get an idea, then all the other things you said happen. I could be in bed at night, and I'm coming up with new parts in my head. I'm hearing like the new thing I came up with over and over again, and I get ideas, and it's kind of crazy. I'll even be playing guitar, recording something, put the guitar down, walk into the next room, and then something pops into my head. I have to turn around and go back, pick up the guitar, turn on the recorder. It's really crazy the way it kind of takes
Yeah.
over your thinking in a way. And it's almost like I'm obsessed with it, and it won't go away. It's just like it's there, like, please go away, I want to sleep. And it doesn't actually go away until I finish writing a song. It's
Mm.
almost like I'm possessed with it or something. Then once I finish it, then I'm kind of all clear again. But if I start on something new, I have that same thing happen.
Right. Do you have to give yourself space? Like once a song is nearing completion, do you have to walk away from it for a little bit and let your ears sort of clear out? And you know what I'm saying? Where you haven't heard it 4,000 times in a row and kind of like rehear it again to kind of give yourself a better judgment.
Yeah, I mean, for the demoing and getting the original ideas down, it's no big deal. It's
Mm,
I do tend to get away from it, you know, for the weekend, even overnight, because I work like normal hours during the day.
mm,
But I mean, by the time I've like mixed the song for a record, listened to that final mix, I probably have heard it like 4,000 times, and so it is good to pick some moments where you can get away from it for a while, so you can kind of come back fresh
right.
and think, with a fresh mind. So yeah, that is an important thing. But if I'm on one song and I move on to another and then another and then another, I'm not listening to the first one, until
Right.
I'm probably finished 10 maybe, and then I come back and I listen through to everything again. And then I get ideas,
Right.
that hey, I could have done this differently, I could add this, whatever. It's everything's always a work in progress with me until, it's totally finished and mixed.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, did you use the same bed tracks for both versions of the song?
They used basically the same bed tracks. There were some edits where parts were longer and maybe
Right.
whatever version, where also where I maybe even had a different rhythm part for a verse in one of the songs. I think it was,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, I
but
definitely.
basically they were the same.
Yeah, there was definitely some differences I could hear. Like, what was the one like you on the instrumental version? You came in straight with like the slight flange, and then the instrumental version you started with a wah wah strum.
Yeah, that's on Vertical Horizon.
Yes,
I
yes,
mean, if they were all totally identical, then the length of each song would be identical.
right.
And if you compare them, sometimes they are, but sometimes they aren't. And that's like the dead giveaway that there was, some added section. I came up with some new ideas and put
Which you
some new
want to do.
stuff
Yeah, definitely.
in. Yeah.
Um, Now, as far as equipment on this album, like what are you doing these days? Are you miking your amps? Oh no, you've got your home studio. Are you miking
Right.
amps still? Are you going direct to board? I mean, what are you doing?
I'm still miking an amp most of the time, and I've been using my trusty Marshall JMP 100 watts that was made in 1980. I
Hmm.
run it through an Engel 4x12 cabinet with Celestion V30s. I bought an old Fender Super Reverb that's a 1965. I used that on some stuff, and I bought a Fender reissue deluxe reverb that I used a little bit. And I try to use different guitars for different things. I use some of my Kramers on this one. I used an Epiphone SG quite a lot.
Hmm.
I used the old Strat style guitar that Fender made for me, and then a regular Strat. And I just try to mix it up. As far as plugins, I did use Amplitude 5 a little bit for certain
Uh-huh.
parts too, because you get like you get different sounds from modelers that you wouldn't get from mic amps. So it's good to utilize everything you can, as far as I'm concerned.
Speaking of that, yeah, and the modeling amps and all that stuff is getting so good. It's, you know,
It's getting, yeah, it really is. And I mean, you have patches with complete effects chains and everything.
yeah,
And you go through and you hear something and you go, oh, it inspires an idea,
right.
that you normally wouldn't have come up with. So that's a really
And
good
it's,
thing.
it's not there to replace tube amps yet, but it's the thing with that, it's a little bit more consistent. I mean, you can have the gremlins in a tube amp where you've got it just dialed in perfect, and you come back an hour later and it doesn't sound like that doesn't sound like it did an hour ago. Like, but
Yeah, I know what you mean.
yeah. But speaking of sounds, I mean, I think you've really, especially on this album, in the preceding years, you kind of expanded your adventurousness and songwriting. Like, I think there's some specific sounds, and I didn't write them down, but like on Rise and Breaking Through, I just remember hearing specific effects and noises you use. I'm like, I don't think he would have used that on Time Odyssey or Mind's Eye. Like, I think it's a natural growth where you're more willing to branch out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you have to like do new things and experiment with different pieces of gear and go in different directions, explore. Otherwise, you get bored, and what's the
Right.
point in doing it anymore if you're not growing? And that's kind of, I've always been on a path, on a journey, as far as I see it, and I'd like to do different things. And in Breaking Through, as you mentioned, there's the harmonizer. I
Mhm.
used to just track when I did harmonies, I would track all the guitars, and
Right.
usually it was only two parts. But on Breaking Through, I did came up with this cool harmony thing with an Eventide plugin called Quadravox, and
Okay.
it's for vocals actually. But I was playing around with it and just came up with this massive sounding part by adding a fourth above and a third below, and I just kind of, all these ideas were born out of playing with that sound. Whereas
Right.
in the old days, I would have created a melody and then just gone back and doubled it. But in this case, I was playing with two harmonies, happening, and it just inspired me to go in different directions and play something different.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing is the sound can be as inspirational as the song idea.
Exactly. The
Yeah,
sound can inspire you for sure.
definitely. Um, the now I looked at your website. Do you have any tour dates coming up for this?
Not yet. We're working on some stuff for the spring.
Okay. I'm
Nothing
particularly,
to announce yet.
I'm not far from you. I'm in Philly, so I'm not too far away.
Oh, wow, you are. Oh,
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. So
Okay.
I'm hoping to see you in my area at some point. So
Oh,
definitely.
gotcha. I didn't realize that. That's
Yeah, you're in Delaware,
awesome.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eagles fan?
Yeah, and I'm not from Philly.
Oh, okay.
I've lived here for about 3 years. I'm originally from Atlanta, and
Okay.
I haven't lived in Atlanta since 1990. I joined the army, so
Okay.
I'm
Gotcha.
from Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta, but I haven't lived there since. I know another question I want to ask you, and I've talked to some guys that have been in your circles over the years, but one question I've never asked them. I've talked to a few of the Mike Varney school of guys.
Mm-hmm.
I've interviewed, Tony McAlpine and Greg Howe and those guys. But one thing I've never asked them, and I'd be curious to hear from you, is in your early days, that whole getting discovered or signed by Mike Varney, what was the vibe then? Were you exposed to the other guys he was bringing in beyond just hearing their demo work? Like, were you meeting them, or was it just sort of I'm getting signed for this potential deal or that kind of thing? Was it
Uh,
isolation? Was it joining a cadre?
I would hear Varney talking about other players he was planning to work with, and I know where they were from, kind of thing. And sometimes he'd play demos over the phone, or I'd hear their records. But and then we'd occasionally meet one another at a NAMM show or something. But I
Right.
think most of those players were scattered all over the country and sometimes the world. I mean, that we didn't really meet. Occasionally we would run into one another, but a
Right.
lot of people think like, oh, Shrapnel Records, Northern California area, like all those Shrapnel guys are living in a camp,
So that's not the
have,
case. Yeah.
have their own little colony in Southern California, and they're shredding.
Right.
But no, it didn't quite happen that way. You would hear about the other guys and meet them here and there, but yeah. you're kind of isolated in your own area doing your own thing.
It really seemed like such a mythical thing. I was in high school in the 80s. So, I grew up as a big Eddie Van Halen fan. And of course, then Yngwie comes along, and then I see this guy, Mike Varney, and read his column. Then all of a sudden you just got, your Paul Gilberts and you and McAlpine and Howe and all these guys just coming out of the floodgates. And it just seemed like Mike Varney was this source of just like, oh, that was a huge impact in the 80s as far as a flood of talent. But I don't think
Definitely. And what he was, say again?
I don't think you all would have been discovered if it weren't for him really reaching out.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It provided a great opportunity for guys doing what we were doing, and, God knows, how well we would have done without that opportunity. So, cheers to Mike for doing those guitar records back in the day.
Definitely. I mean, because I don't think kids today would understand that before the internet, there was no way to be exposed to all that. I mean,
exactly.
I mean,
old school.
You didn't hear it. Yeah. The only way I heard was leafing through guitar magazines, and I'd find you and just whatever. The only way you'd find it is to read about it and just sort of track it down, because there was no exposure to it.
Yeah, it was a totally different thing. Totally. Now you can go on YouTube and someone teaches you how to play a certain part, and which is an awesome thing. Actually, I wish I was able to see Richie Blackmore teaching how he did some of his parts when I was a kid, or even Eddie. It would have been amazing.
Yeah, the learning curve. Yeah, exactly. I don't think it was until the internet came around that I realized I played Fly By Night wrong. I'm doing it wrong. It's just amazing the difference it is. And you see that in the kids on YouTube today and Instagram, where they're just shredders at 17. I mean, just
yeah, it is pretty amazing. The bar has been raised, that's for sure.
Way past anything I would have ever done, but that's cool. Now, beyond the album, and you were hoping to get some tour dates lined up, what else, future plans? I mean, anything other than that? I know you're just coming off that's being released a couple months ago, but I mean, are you looking forward to anything, or?
There's the possibility that there might be some more UFO shows, depending on how Phil is doing. And I get a feeling it might happen, but I don't want to say anything.
Sure.
We'll see. Fingers crossed, though. So there potentially could be some UFO shows. And then, I want to do some solo shows in America and in Europe, and then start working on a new record. But not have, I'd like to do more of a band thing with a vocalist. And, this time I did a little experimenting with different vocalists. There are 4 on the record.
Right.
But eventually I'd like to be in a place where there's a band, like a permanent band.
I think it works. I mean, you're playing suits that well, and I think that would be a good direction, especially over your career with, I mean, UFO, you've been within since like 03 or?
Yeah, like 20 years.
Yeah, 20 years.
Totally insane, man. It flew by.
And you tend to think of guys like you. I still think of like, oh, he's the new guy in UFO, and you're like, holy hell, he's been in there way longer than anybody else. It's the same with like guys like Steve Morse and Deep Purple. Like, you just sort of forget, like, he's been there way longer than anybody else was.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I was told I was the 17th guitarist in UFO. I had never known there were that many, but apparently they've been counted, and I'm number 17.
Well, it's like I've joked, like at some point in their life, everybody in the world was a member of Whitesnake. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Revolving door.
Yeah. It could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, but it just depends. But well, cool. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing, more stuff. I love the new album. And
thank you.
Want to reiterate again, that's Double Exposure. And where's the best place for people to track that down? Physical copies or online? Or
yeah, physically. I'm selling them from my big cartel page, autographs. A lot of people like the autograph CDs, so they're available, and you can get that information at my website. But they're on Amazon. You can get them at Amazon, and then Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon Music, and so all the normal places.
Right. Well, it's definitely a worthy musical endeavor to get if somebody does not have the album yet, because it's a good listen. I definitely
better check it out today.
Yeah, get it now. Well, cool. Well, I certainly appreciate Vinny, and by all means, let me know you got my info, whatever, or I'll be keeping my eye out too for tour dates. We're in the reasonable proximity, so I can definitely make it to some shows. And
Sweet, sounds great.
cool. We'll be talking soon.
Well, good talking to you. I hope it was okay. I got kind of a little cold, so
I actually I got a glass of water here. I got a frog in my throat too. I'm trying to.
yeah, me too. Got
Yeah.
your stuff nose, but I'm endorsing Ricola, so
And then I'll have to get you at some point to throw some sweat stains in my new Kramer and give it some mojo.
sounds cool, man. Absolutely.
All right, appreciate
Okay.
it.
Thanks a lot, man. Totally appreciate it. Have a good evening.
You too.